Real Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN. I'm Brian Winnikins from World Dairy Expo. And thank you to our Expo sponsors, including Alcivia Co-op, Osteoplastics, UtterTech, BioVet, along with Bauer Seeds and Service, your Pioneer dealer in western Wisconsin. And we are at the Pioneer booth. I'm with Bill Mahanna. He is a dairy nutritionist from Pioneer. Talk a little bit about BMR and conventional silage, how we can make that work. And Bill, thanks for joining us today. Okay, there's obviously differences in the BMR and the conventional silages. What are those differences?
Yeah, basically how we can utilize those best in the diet, and then how can we reduce agronomic risk in the field. And I'll call them standard hybrids as opposed to conventional, because sometimes when you say conventional, people think it means no traits. So that's how we refer to it as standard. So what we've really done is looked at all the research, and none of it was Pioneer research. It was all university research and U.S. Dairy Forage research, like from here in Madison, and some work at Cornell University, showing that where brown midrib, which is low lignin, it's more digestible, the fiber is more fragile, so it moves through the animal faster, so the animal eats more when she consumes BMR silage, be that corn or forage sorghum or whatever is a brown midrib. So the really interesting point is, when do we want to drive intakes? So in those transition cows, a couple of weeks before they calve, and then in the high string, or first 5, 6, 7 weeks into lactation, we want to drive intakes, so that we have cows that are eating and they've got enough energy to have mammary growth and proliferation. And then once they reach their peak and start on the downside of their lactation curve, say the low group, if we're dividing the herd into high string and low string, we're probably better off at that point in time maybe using a standard hybrid, because why feed an animal something that they're going to eat more of and you're not going to get any more milk out of them than a standard hybrid? So that's on the animal side. On the plant side, brown midribs are a little bit more of an agronomic risk than a standard hybrid. We know that they don't yield quite as much yet. We're working on that, but there's probably a 10 to 12% yield drag with brown midrib compared to standard. Now, we're willing to take a little bit of a yield drag if we can put it in the right area of the diet. We don't harvest alfalfa at full flower to maximize yield. We harvest it at late bud to maximize digestibility. So you can kind of think about brown midrib in the same way. But so what we're advocating is, thinking about maybe 20 to 30% of the acres allocated to the Bovalta BMR hybrids, and then the rest, 70, 80%, depending on the dairy, as a standard hybrid, where you get a lot more tonnage, and less agronomic risk to it. Now, it's tough for some guys who are feeding a one group TMR. Well, it'd be hard, but at least, and the data is really clear that the best place you can use BMR, if you only had one place to use it, would be in the transition cow diet. And so even if you had a bag or that you could, utilize. The other thing is, people say, well, can I have 2 bunkers open or 2 silos open? Am I going to have spoilage in that? And today, using, silage inoculants that contain Lactobacillus buchneri will really keep feed fresh, and you can have a face open and really not have to worry about taking all that much off of it to keep it fresh, because the buchneri will inhibit yeast growth. So I think there's ways to manage around it.
Is that the biggest challenge of trying to manage this? Because, geez, I got to keep stuff separate, and I got to do this, and not only I got to keep it separate in the mixer, now I got to keep it separate in the harvesting, on and on, and planting and all. Okay, so I can already hear a couple of dairy farmers saying to me, well, then why bother? I mean, and so why should they bother?
Yeah, well, if you feed a BMR to your tail end group, your feed efficiency is going to be severely lowered. And I hear this argument that you just made. I hear it all the time. It's fine tuning it, but we wouldn't mix ditch hay in with 200 relative feed quality alfalfa and say, okay, we're going to feed it all the same, because it's a hassle to separate it. And we got to get to that point when it comes to silage as well. And again, there's even some people talk about interseeding BMR with standard, but we don't recommend that either, because you will have diluted that effect of the BMR in half, and really by the time you get it in the diet, you've really lost a lot of the value of it. So yeah, it's another thing we got to fine tune, but we used to go around with a scoop and feed all cows the same amount of grain too, but we've learned that we got to fine tune things if we're really going to be productive.
So, with that fine tuning, how important then is it going to be for that type of agriculture where it's precision? I mean, is this just another step in this precision that we're going to need to really learn?
Absolutely, and yeah, and a lot of people think, well, silage corn is kind of an afterthought in some ways, but alfalfa acres have been going down in North America for the past 25 years. Corn silage acres have stayed flat or grown a little bit, and we know it's because corn silage is becoming a bigger component in the diet. And it's just something we've got to learn to manage. We talk about narrow row corn. We talk about using fungicides to protect that crop and protect the leaf so we get the starch deposition. Yeah, it's just another step in being managing that feed quality. And it's bad enough. We set the tone with genetics, but Mother Nature has the final say in terms of the growing environment. That's extremely important. And then the other thing is harvest timing. One of the things we can even manage with that, when I think about harvest timing, is we want to have genetics that we don't have tar spot coming in and causing problems and using fungicides in that. But harvest timing is we need to know how many acres a day we can plant. We need to know how many acres a day we can harvest. We need to start spreading maturities of our hybrids. We would like to have carpet corn, if you will. We would like to have the same quality, the same thing going into that silo or bunker or pile or whatever you're storing it with every load. And that's going to take some timing and some management to do that.
Some good advice. You can find out more. Just talk with Justin and the staff over at Bauer Seeds and Service, your local Pioneer dealers serving Western Wisconsin. We're at World Dairy Expo. I'm Brian Winnikins for WRDN.